Rev up your engines! Now here we have an almost original owner Camry. He bought it when it was 2 years old. Most of it's still original, the struts, the engine, the transmission, but he's getting a horrible clunk when he goes over stuff. So we're gonna go through the whole thing and figure out what it is. Now even though it's 17 years old and it lives in Massachusetts, the land of rust, you can see it's still in pretty good shape. Even back then, Toyota knew how to seal vehicles so that they didn't get the body rust. You can see on our 07 Matrix, it doesn't have body rust. Mind you, it lived in Texas and Tennessee most of the time, but Toyota knew how to seal them. If it was a Ford or a Chevy, be all rotten here and there, and it's not, then we crawl under. The frame's still solid. They knew how to coat them. Now you can see the exhaust here is pretty shiny. That's been replaced. That's the one thing about New England. Mufflers and tailpipes are gonna rot. They don't Texas, they don't Tennessee, but all the salt on the road, the salt water gets on the exhaust, which is just bare metal, and eventually it starts eating it up. So he's had to replace pieces of that. To me, I'm totally amazed at how well they make exhaust systems these days. Because even my 1994 Celica still has the all original exhaust system, and it doesn't leak. And none of them have fallen off yet. When I was a kid, we had to change mufflers every 3-4 years. They just rotted out. They make them better than they used to, but still, if you live in New England, you're going to replace pipes, you're going to replace mufflers, because the salt water just eventually destroys them. Unless, of course, you park it in the winter and use some clunker and then bring your nice car out in the summer. That's about the only way you can escape it. Now you can see it's got cloth interior. A lot of people don't like it. I do, because it lasts longer. If these had been leather chairs, they'd be all ripped and torn, and it'd be a gigantic mess. As you can see when we turn it on, baby got some miles on. It's got 189,566 miles. Start trying up. Now this is a luxury Camry, so it's got the bigger V6 engine. Get a little bit worse gas mileage. You can hear various tiny rattling, that doesn't mean anything. But the first thing we're going to check is the motor mount. Now the owner's inside, he's going to put it in reverse and park. We'll see if there's any big jiggling here. Yep, okay. Well, that was the easiest diagnosis I ever did. Transmission mounts are worn. Now you can see this dog bone mount is cracked. Now at some point in time it's been changed because there's a bit of a label here, but it must have been quite some time ago. Now often the motor mount here goes bad because you can see it's right next to the exhaust, but in this case it's not separating here. The rubber here is the part that rips, and it's not separating at all. Now I realize back in the day, in the 60s, American cars with big V8 engines, the motor actually hung on the motor mounts. And when the motor mounts would break, the engine would actually sink down and hit the ground, which is dangerous. Now Toyota's the opposite. The mounts are bolted on the car, then the engine sits on top of them. So when the rubber rots, they don't hit the ground, they just sit there. But then when you hit bumps, they move up and down. And that's when you hear the noise. It sounds like the front of the car's falling apart, and it really does. One or more of the mounts are wearing out. We'll check the back ones by jacking it up. So we'll take a trip under, check back here. You can see it's got a new flex pipe too. That's the first thing that rots up north is the flex pipe, because it flexes. Then eventually it rots and it leaks. Well, the front one and the side one here are okay. But while we're at it, it does have the original struts. There's no play on this side. It's rusty, but it still works. And we'll check this side. No appreciable play, really. Check it out while you look under here. Here's the strut. Look, the original one, and yet it still dry as a bone. It's not even leaking. Let's just say they don't make them like you used to. If you remember, the guy brought me a Camry a couple weeks ago, and he had new struts put on in the garage 2 years previously and had lifetime warranty. And the guy said, well, they're leaking now, and there's a warranty on the struts, but you got to pay me $300 to put them on. Needless to say, he didn't bother because it was riding okay, but that just shows you the quality of these old things. Under the driver's side, check that out. Cover's okay, it's not leaking. Start it up again and put it in and out of park and drive in reverse. Put it in drive. You can see it's moving in the back. Now put it in reverse. See how the whole thing's moving up and down? The way the back of the transmission goes up and down, we know at a minimum back transmission mount is worn, because it's making it go back and forth like that. As I told the owner, there's 5 different mounts on this thing. They all work together. It's an old car. You start taking them apart, you got to take them all off in order to jack the engine up to get enough clearance to put it on. And when you do, you'll generally break them all on a car that's this old. Just face the facts. You get a car that's this old, things are going to start breaking. Now we're going to take it for a road test. It's not unsafe as far as I'm concerned. Not going to ever fall down. And the big giant ones are okay because the front one, that's the main one, that's solid. And the side one over there, that's solid. It's not cracked. So it's more in the back. And I kind of expected that because when I looked at the back, I can see there's a tiny leak in the transmission. It's no big deal. But the leak will get on the rubber mount. Then the mount will degrade from the oil getting on it, and that's why those mounts go bad. Toyota actually makes them so good they last forever, but when oil gets on them, it eats them up, and then when they crack, they separate and they clunk. But let's take it for a spin. Even though the struts are original, deliberately hit bumps. And it isn't that bad. We're trying to get the clunk from the engine. Yeah, you can kind of hear it there. And this Toyota's out of the way, here we go. Still got a lot of pickup left in it. Now sometimes I can feel it in my foot. I can feel it as it jiggles back and forth. But when you hit a big bump, of course the whole thing's gonna move up and down a little, and when it hits down it makes a bang. In search of a bump. Where are the bumps when you want them? Parking lots always have bumps in them. There, I hear it, clunking. There it goes. I guess where the noise is coming from? Right up inside here. That's where the transmission is. So, it's not dangerous. And of course, like I said, if you start taking these mounts off and moving them, the other ones can crack. I personally would wait on this one because it's not that bad. When it's really bad, when you go from drive to reverse, every time it'll go clunker, clunker, clunker. Now we could see it move when we did it with the hood open, but it's not even clunking there yet because the other mounts are still okay. Like you say, if you start taking them apart, they might not be. Then you could spend $1,000-something swapping them all out, which you really don't need to do. Now he brought it over here because the guy he goes to has a tire store, is a decent mechanic there, and he said it's not your front end, it's not your struts, and the guy was right. It's stupid mounts on the transmission. It isn't going to really hurt anything. I would personally live with it myself too because I'm not going to take all those mounts apart. Take a chance that a lot of them will break. And here's the thing about mounts. And if you don't believe me and don't listen to me, the school of hard knocks will teach you a lesson. You buy motor or transmission mounts, you got to go OEM, the original factory. Because the aftermarket ones often don't fit right, are made out of the wrong kind of rubber. I've had people buy aftermarket ones, and yeah, factory one might be $280 and they paid $59 on eBay or on Amazon. It came from China. They were so hard that when you put them on, you could actually feel the engine vibrating that was running. That's the point of a motor mount, is to stop the vibration, and they didn't stop it at all. Not only will it vibrate, in most cases, but a lot of times it won't even fit. I've had people buy them, they got the engine jacked up, they put the new mounts, they jack them on, and they won't line up because they weren't made correctly. Believe me, if you're going to change them, go original equipment. And this, you can buy them wherever you want. You don't have to go to the dealer. Lots of places can sell them. But don't go for cheap aftermarket ones because they're such a pain to put on. And if they don't fit right, you're going to be mad as a hornet. In this case, it doesn't really need it done now. You wanted to know what the clunking was, and that's what it is. If eventually it gets bad enough that every time he goes reverse park, and the whole thing clunker, 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 then it's probably a good idea to go in there and pray you can just change one and not have to change them all. But as for now, since it's a Toyota design and it sits on top of the mounts, it really ain't going to hurt anything. Now, if it had been the one on the front of the motor, or the side of the motor, yeah, you got it, because then it's going to jerk so much that it could pop the axles out of the transmission and the CV axles will come right out. But this isn't even near that. So personally, I'd leave it alone rather than take a chance of spending $1,000-something if everything starts breaking when you take it apart. And here's some bonus questions and answers. George 11694 says, I have pulsation in my accelerator pedal. What can make my car pulse to the gas pedal when the car goes up to 60 miles an hour? It's not the tires or the control arms or tie rods or stabilizer links. I've replaced those all. You're saying your accelerator pedal. If you got a problem with the tires or anything, of course your steering wheel is going to do it. But if it's just the accelerator pedal, that is bolted right down the bottom, right? And that's vibrating. So somehow you've got body roll down there in the middle. This is a Nissan Quest. I've seen the transmissions get vibration and you feel it because the gas pedal is near there, right? Also, what you want to do is have the motor mounts and the transmission mounts tested, because they could be weak, and at a certain speed, then engine and transmission start vibrating, and you're going to feel on the pedal because the pedal is right on the right side near the middle of the vehicle. You got to concentrate on stuff that's in the middle of the vehicle, where it's all near there and something there is vibrating. And there are motor mounts and transmission mounts near there. I would check the motor mounts and the transmissions first to see if any of those are broken. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.